Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a really close look at, well, one of the shorter chapters in Genesis, but wow, it packs a punch theologically.
Yeah.
Chapter 48. We've got this fantastic essay here, really comprehensive, digging into this very intimate deathbed scene.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
And our mission really is to go beyond just, seeing it as a simple family story. We want to unpack the huge historical, spiritual, and prophetic significance of this single moment of blessing.
Absolutely.
And importantly, figure out what this story, maybe 3,700 years old, what it actually means for you listening today. Especially this whole pattern of God choosing in unexpected ways.
Exactly. Because this chapter, it's a real turning point. It's this incredibly sacred moment. You've got transition, legacy, prophetic destiny all wrapped up together.
Right.
And the setting is key. Jacob, who's now called Israel, he knows he's dying. He's in Goshen in Egypt, not Canaan.
Yeah, away from the promised land.
And he calls in Joseph, clearly his favorite son, and Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. He brings them into his room for this final act. It's all about defining the covenant going forward.
It's like witnessing the baton pass, the spiritual authority handover, right before he goes.
Precisely. It's that weight of finality.
Okay, so let's really get into it. The absolute core of the drama, the thing everyone remembers, is this very deliberate action Jacob takes.
The crossing of the hands.
Exactly. He crosses his hands, and it just completely upends what everyone expected, certainly what Joseph expected based on, the rules of the firstborn.
Primogeniture, yeah.
This isn't just him being old and confused. It's a physical act loaded with meaning. It's like a declaration, isn't it? Divine choice over human tradition.
That's exactly it. And that's where this chapter gets so incredibly fascinating to unpack.
So setting the stage, we really need to understand just how frail Jacob is at this point, right?
Yeah, the sources really emphasize this. He's described as sick, failing rapidly, he's physically weak.
And his eyesight, too, it says it's dim for age. He's practically blind.
Right. And that context is vital. It highlights that the authority he's about to wield isn't coming from physical strength at all. It's purely spiritual.
But then there's this amazing contrast. The moment he hears Joseph is there with the boys,
He rallies.
He totally rallies. It says he gathers his strength and sat up in bed. That's not just being polite. That's the patriarch asserting himself one last time.
It shows his mind is sharp. His spirit is strong, even if his body isn't. He's fully present, fully authoritative for this moment. It makes it clear this isn't some, confused act of an old man.
No delirium here. Okay, and then there's the emotional layer, that history between Jacob and Joseph.
Yeah.
I mean, the coat, the brothers, Joseph being presumed dead for decades.
All that tension, all that grief.
I get it.
It finds resolution here. Jacob says, and you can almost hear the emotion, I never expected to see your face again.
Yeah.
And now God has let me see your children too. It's this moment of profound gratitude, of closure. It really heals that long-standing wound.
And that emotional healing, that restoration, it seems to give even more weight to the legal stuff, the blessings that come next. It turns this sick room into a sacred space.
Absolutely. It clears the air for the covenant acts to follow.
So Jacob's ready to act, but first he grounds everything in the past. He doesn't jump straight to the blessing or the inheritance. He starts by talking about God appearing to him way back.
Or lose. Yeah, which he reminds Joseph is Bethel.
In Canaan. And that's key, isn't it? Why focus so much on Canaan when they're living seemingly quite comfortably in Goshen, the best part of Egypt?
That's the theological core right there. Jacob is basically giving a deathbed history lesson. He's reminding Joseph and setting it up for his grandsons, look, our prosperity here in Egypt, it's temporary.
It's a gift, but not the destination.
Exactly. It's God's provision for now, but our real destiny, our identity, is tied to God's promise about Canaan. So he hammers home those core promises again.
Which are
fruitfulness, multiplication, becoming like a multitude of nations or a congregation of tribes, and crucially, the land of Canaan itself, given to his descendants as an everlasting possession.
everlasting. That's a powerful word, especially when they don't currently possess it.
It highlights promise over presence, doesn't it? They're surrounded by Egyptian power, Egyptian stability, maybe even Egyptian gods. But Jacob keeps pointing them back to Canaan.
So that idea of everlasting possession, it holds true no matter who's currently living there, who holds the political power.
That's the claim. It's a statement of faith in the covenant, regardless of current circumstances. It's Jacob taking a stand spiritually against just blending into Egyptian life.
Don't get too comfortable here. Remember who you are and where you're ultimately headed.
Precisely. The temptation for these boys, Ephraim and Manasseh, born and raised in Egypt, must have been huge. identify with Pharaoh's court, with Egyptian ways.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Jacob's insisting, no. Your identity, your future, your allegiance. It belongs to the promise God made back near the Jordan, not here by the Nile.
Now, tucked right into that reminder about the covenant promise at Bethel, he brings up something incredibly personal and painful.
Rachel's death.
Yeah. His beloved wife, Joseph's mother, dying on the road from Padan near Ephraim, which is Bethlehem. Why pause the big covenant talk for that sad memory?
Well, I think it does a couple of really profound things. First, emotionally, it just underlines the depth of Jacob's grief and love for Rachel. It explains, that special, maybe even excessive favor he always showed Joseph and now extends to Joseph's sons.
It connects the blessing back to that deep love.
Right. But second, and this is maybe more for us looking back, by specifically naming Ephraim, which is Bethlehem.
Oh. The future birthplace of David and Jesus.
Exactly. He's subtly tying Joseph's lineage through these boys directly into that specific geographic thread of the covenant promise that leads ultimately to the Messiah. It's not just a random sad memory. It connects this moment in Egypt to the future redemption story unfolding in Canaan. It adds another layer of spiritual weight.
Okay, so that emotional grounding, that connection to the past and future promises, it leads Jacob right into this major legal act, the formal adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh.
Yeah, this is huge. It's not just grandpa being affectionate. This is a legal tribal restructuring.
How so? What does the adoption actually do legally and culturally?
In the ancient Near East, this kind of adoption was a known legal mechanism. When Jacob declares, "They shall be mine," as Reuben and Simeon, "they shall be mine," he's not just saying he loves them like sons.
He's literally making them his sons in terms of tribal status.
Exactly. He elevates them from grandsons to the legal status of direct sons. They become patriarchs of future tribes right alongside Reuben and Simeon, his actual firstborn sons.
And the big consequence of that is?
The double portion. Joseph gets the birthright inheritance.
Okay, walk us through that double portion again. Who was supposed to get it?
Traditionally, Reuben, as the firstborn son, should have received the double portion of the inheritance.
But he messed up. Big time.
He did. Genesis 35 tells us he slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine, a massive betrayal that cost him his birthright.
So the birthright gets split.
Essentially, yes. Later tradition sees the kingship, the royal line, going to Judah. But the double portion of land and descendants, that right to be represented by two tribes in the inheritance, that goes to Joseph.
And this adoption is the mechanism. By making Ephraim and Manasseh his direct sons, they each represent one portion of Joseph's inheritance.
Precisely. Joseph's line gets twice the representation among the tribes of Israel. It legally secures that forfeited double portion for him.
This also performs like a radical identity shift for the boys themselves, doesn't it? They were born in Egypt. Their mother was Egyptian.
Absolutely. They were born in, as the text implies, the land of affliction, potentially seen as outsiders or at least, culturally mixed.
But Jacob just wipes that slate clean.
Completely. With this act, they go from being half Egyptian grandsons to being full heirs of Israel. Any ambiguity about their identity, their loyalty, their place in the covenant, it's gone. They now have guaranteed tribal destinies within Israel.
That's a pretty powerful statement about inclusion, isn't it? That belonging isn't just about blood or birthplace.
It's about patriarchal declaration, about being legally and spiritually grafted in. It sets a precedent that family identity can be redefined by covenant commitment.
And the sources mention what happens if Joseph had more children later.
Right. It clarifies that any future sons wouldn't form new tribes. They'd be counted under Ephraim or Manasseh. So these two are it. They are the full and final representation of Joseph's lineage in the structure of Israel.
Okay, so the legal adoption is done. The stage is set for the final spiritual act, the blessing itself. And this is where the tension really ramps up.
It is, because Joseph, he understands protocol. He knows how these things are supposed to work. He sets his sons up according to the rules.
The rule of primogeniture, firstborn gets the main blessing.
Exactly. So he carefully positions Manasseh, the elder son, at Jacob's right hand. That's the place of preeminence, the position for the greater blessing.
And Ephraim the younger.
He places Ephraim at Jacob's left hand, the position for the secondary blessing. Joseph is doing everything by the book. He's trying to help his father, who he knows is nearly blind, get it right.
He's following the cultural custom, the logical order, making sure tradition is upheld.
But Jacob isn't operating by human logic or tradition at this moment. He's clearly being guided by something else. Prophetic insight, perhaps?
So what does he do?
He reaches out his hands, and then He deliberately, consciously crosses them.
Wow. Just visually picturing that.
It's a stunning image. His right hand, the hand that should be giving the primary blessing to the firstborn, he places it on Ephraim's head, the younger son.
And the left hand.
Goes on to Manasseh, the elder. He completely reverses the expected order.
Those crossed hands, they become the absolute central symbol of the whole chapter, don't they?
They really do. It's this unmistakable sign that God's choice, God's election, is overriding human customs and expectations.
But you can understand Joseph's reaction, can't you? I mean, wasn't he sort of right to try and correct his father? Isn't sticking to the rules like primogeniture important for stability? Wasn't Jacob potentially causing future chaos?
Oh, absolutely. That's the heart of the tension. Joseph is described as being displeased, even upset. He genuinely thinks his father, because of his age and blindness, has made a terrible mistake.
A mistake with real consequences for the future tribes.
Yes. So he physically tries to intervene. He takes hold of his father's right hand to lift it off Ephraim's head and move it over to Manasseh's.
He's trying to enforce the established norm. He wants his firstborn to get the top blessing. That feels natural, logical.
It does. He's probably thinking about preventing future rivalry, ensuring order. He's struggling to accept something that seems illogical, maybe even wrong according to tradition.
But Jacob won't budge.
He refuses. And his words are so firm, so clear. He tells Joseph, "I know what I'm doing, my son. I know it."
I know it. Jacob basically saying, this isn't a mistake. This is insight.
Precisely. He's asserting his spiritual prophetic authority over Joseph's very understandable human logic. The patriarch Israel is speaking, not just the frail old man Jacob.
And then he delivers the prophetic verse.
He does. He confirms, yes, Manasseh will be great. He will become a people. His descendants will be numerous. But his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Melech HaGoyim in Hebrew, fullness of nations. It's a decisive elevation of Ephraim.
Wow. So he sets Ephraim ahead of Manasseh permanently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it even creates a new standard blessing formula within Israel from that point on. People would say, may God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. Notice the order. Ephraim first.
Okay, so when we step back and look at this whole scene in the context of the rest of the Bible, this crossing of the hands, this choosing the younger over the elder, it's not actually a one-off, is it?
Not at all. It's a recurring theme, almost a pattern. It's one of the key ways the text demonstrates divine sovereignty.
Meaning God isn't bound by our rules.
Exactly. Jacob's action here powerfully affirms that God's plan, his choices, they aren't restricted by human traditions like primogeniture or by what we think makes someone qualified or deserving. God chooses according to his own purpose.
And often, it seems, he deliberately chooses the unexpected candidate.
Very often. He chooses the younger, the weaker, the less likely, perhaps, to show that the power and the blessing come from him, not from human status or strength.
What are some other examples the sources point to? Where else do we see this pattern?
Well, right back in Genesis, you have Abel chosen over Cain, the elder, then Isaac, the son of promise, over Ishmael, the firstborn chronologically.
Jacob himself over Esau.
Absolutely. Jacob's own life story is Exhibit A for this principle. And then in the next generation, Judah, the fourth son, gets the leadership mantle over Reuben, Simeon, and Levi.
And later on.
Moses and Aaron weren't the oldest Levites, and perhaps most famously, David. Youngest of Jesse's sons, out tending sheep, completely overlooked by everyone, including the prophet Samuel initially.
Right. God tells Samuel, man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
Exactly. So this pattern consistently disrupts human expectations about age, status, or perceived fitness. It emphasizes that covenant blessing flows from God's gracious election, not from human merit or birth order.
Okay, let's dig into some of the deeper typological readings. The idea that Ephraim and Manasseh, born in Egypt to an Egyptian mother, somehow foreshadow the inclusion of, well, spiritual outsiders.
Yes, that's a very common and powerful reading. Their adoption and full inclusion into Israel, despite being, half Egyptian and born outside Canaan, is seen as a beautiful picture, a type of how Gentiles, those outside the original covenant line, would later be grafted into God's family through faith in Christ.
So just like these boys were given full status, full inheritance rights,
so too are believers from all nations given full status as children of God, heirs alongside the original covenant people. It points to the amazing, unexpected breadth of God's redemptive plan. It wasn't just for one ethnic group.
and Jacob's own words during the blessing.
Yeah.
They're packed with meaning, too, aren't they? He invokes God in specific ways.
He does. It's a deeply personal testimony right at the end of his life. He talks about the God who has been my shepherd all my life.
Acknowledging God's constant guidance and provision.
Yes. And then he adds, and the angel who has kept me from all harm redeemed me from all evil. That word redeemed is significant.
How so?
The Hebrew word is goel. A go was a kinsman redeemer. In Israelite law, this was a near relative who had the responsibility to protect family members, buy back lost family property, even avenge a wrongful death.
So Jacob is identifying God, or this angel of God, as his personal kinsman redeemer, the one who rescued him throughout his life.
Exactly. He's attributing his survival, his deliverance from Esau, from Laban, from all sorts of dangers to this divine Goel, and typologically looking forward, who is the ultimate kinsman redeemer?
Jesus Christ.
Right. The one who pays the price to redeem his people, his kin, from the ultimate evil, sin and death, and brings them into the family. Many see Jacob's words here as a pointer, perhaps unconsciously on Jacob's part, to Christ.
That adds a whole other dimension. Now, what about the physical gesture itself? The crossed hands. Is there an allegorical reading of that too?
Some interpreters see it that way, yes. They suggest the crossed hands symbolize the counterintuitive way God's blessing often works. We expect it to follow straight lines, logical paths, right hand to right head.
But God's ways are higher than our ways.
Exactly. His greatest blessings might come through unexpected means, through reversals, even through suffering. The cross itself is the ultimate example, isn't it?
Yeah.
An instrument of torture and shame becomes the source of eternal life and reconciliation. Completely subverts worldly wisdom. So the crossed hands could be seen as a small picture, a foreshadowing of that kind of divine paradoxical blessing.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly to something less visible in the text, but definitely implied by the context. The spiritual battles happening behind the scenes. Yeah.
Right. Jacob isn't just blessing his grandsons. He's fighting for their spiritual future in a potentially hostile environment.
The environment being Egypt.
Yes. The pull of Egypt, its culture, its power, its religion, it must have been immense. Jacob's actions here, deliberately adopting the boys into Israel, emphasizing the covenant with Canaan, and later insisting he be buried in Canaan, not Egypt. These are all acts of spiritual resistance.
Resistance against what? Assimilation.
Against assimilation, yes. Against losing their distinct identity as God's covenant people. Egypt was the world's superpower, remember? Sophisticated, wealthy, and deeply idolatrous.
What kind of idolatry are we talking about?
Oh, a complex pantheon. Sun worship, Ra, the deification of Pharaoh himself, animal deities like the Apis bull, gods associated with the Nile, fertility, the afterlife. It was pervasive. Joseph himself, as vizier, looked Egyptian, acted Egyptian.
And Ephraim and Manasseh were born right into the heart of that.
They grew up surrounded by it. The wealth, the power, the religious practices. The temptation to just blend in, to adopt Egyptian ways of thinking and worship would have been strong. Jacob is actively working to counteract that. He's giving them an Israelite identity rooted in covenant promise to anchor them against the Egyptian cultural tide.
And this connects to their future, doesn't it? Especially Ephraim. Jacob predicts greatness for him, but history shows. Well, it wasn't all smooth sailing spiritually.
That's a really crucial, sobering point the sources raise. Ephraim did become the dominant tribe in the northern kingdom. The whole kingdom was often just called Ephraim, huge prominence, just as Jacob predicted. Right. But they also became deeply associated with idolatry. The prophets, especially Hosea, constantly rebuke Ephraim for turning away from God, for setting up idols, for spiritual adultery.
And the sources suggest this might link back to their origins.
Some commentators see a connection, yeah. They suggest that perhaps Ephraim retained a kind of spiritual tinge of that Egyptian idolatry from their upbringing. It serves as a warning, really.
A warning that even divine blessing and prominence don't automatically guarantee faithfulness.
Exactly. You can be chosen, you can be blessed, you can be elevated, but you still have to actively fight against the pull of the world, against those residual influences from the culture you came out of. Prominence didn't equal piety for Ephraim. They still had to choose faithfulness.
Before Jacob finishes, he gives Joseph two final things. First, that promise of return.
Yes. He assures Joseph, God will be with you and will bring you again to Canaan, the land of your ancestors.
Again reinforcing, Egypt is temporary. Your destiny is elsewhere.
It keeps their hope fixed on God's promise, not their present comfort. It's about looking forward to the inheritance.
And the second thing, he gives Joseph an extra piece of land.
Right, a specific piece, Shechem. He says it's one ridge of land. The meaning is a bit debated, maybe one shoulder or portion that he took from the Amorites, with my sword and my bow.
Okay, Shechem, that place has history. Some dark history with Jacob's family involving Dinah.
It absolutely does. It was the place where Dinah was violated, and where Simeon and Levi carried out that brutal, vengeful massacre, a place of trauma.
So why single that place out as a special gift?
That's what makes it so interesting. Shechem wasn't just the site of that trauma. It was also the very first place in Canaan where God appeared to Abraham and promised the land to him and his descendants.
So it has a dual legacy,
Yeah.
promise and pain.
Exactly. And by bequeathing Shechem specifically to Joseph, Jacob seems to be doing something redemptive. He's taking this place marked by violence and family shame and reclaiming it as a site of promise, of inheritance, of future victory.
And it solidifies Joseph's double portion tangibly.
Yes, it gives him a specific named piece of the promised land now, even while they're still in Egypt. And significantly, Shechem is where Joseph's bones will eventually be buried centuries later. It physically anchors Joseph and his lineage directly and permanently to the heart of Canaan. It redeems the past for the future.
So we've unpacked this ancient scene. A deathbed in Egypt nearly 4,000 years ago. How does all this connect to us today? It feels pretty distant.
But the themes are surprisingly modern, aren't they? Especially this whole idea of divine choice versus human merit. Our world is obsessed with meritocracy, with earning your place, with conventional success.
Right. You climb the ladder, you follow the rules, you achieve.
And Genesis 48 pushes back hard against that. For us as individuals, it's a huge encouragement to trust God's plan, even, maybe especially, when it makes no logical sense to us.
Like Joseph trying to correct God's blessing.
Exactly. We often want to arrange things according to our own ideas of who's deserving, who's first, who's best qualified. Jacob's crossed hands remind us God often picks the unlikely, the overlooked, the Ephraims of the world. Your value comes from his choice, not your resume or your birth order.
What about for families? What's the takeaway there?
Look at Jacob's priority. His final driving concern wasn't dividing up flocks or Egyptian assets. It was about transferring the covenant, the spiritual identity.
Passing on the faith.
Yes. It's a powerful model for parents, for grandparents. What legacy are you truly focused on leaving? Is it just material stuff, which is temporary, like Goshen? Or is it the spiritual heritage, the covenant identity, which Jacob calls an everlasting possession? That's the real wealth.
And his act of adoption? Bringing Ephraim and Manasseh fully into the family fold, that seems relevant too.
Hugely relevant. In a world with so many blended families, adopted children, stepchildren, Jacob's action is this ancient, powerful affirmation of inclusion. It says family identity, covenant belonging, isn't solely defined by biology.
It's defined by commitment, by declaration, by being brought in.
Exactly. It establishes the dignity and full status of those who might otherwise be seen as other or less than. It provides this amazing theological foundation for radically inclusive family identity.
Okay, and the ultimate connection, especially for Christians listening, this all points toward spiritual adoption.
Yep.
Right?
That's the deepest layer, absolutely. Jacob adopting Ephraim and Manasseh, giving them full rights as sons. It's a beautiful foreshadowing, a small picture of what God does for us in Jesus Christ.
We who are outsiders.
Right. Gentiles, sinners, spiritually estranged. Through faith in Christ, God adopts us. He gives us full status, full rights, full privileges as his children, as co-heirs with Christ. Just like Ephraim and Manasseh received status they didn't technically have by birth.
Regardless of our background, our lineage, our past failures.
Irrelevant to our status as adopted children, it's all grace. This is the antidote to feeling like you have to earn God's favor or feeling insecure about your standing with him.
And that pattern of reversal, choosing the younger, the weaker, that reinforces this idea of grace.
Completely. It assures us that God's favor isn't based on our worthiness, our achievements, or our social standing. He chooses freely, sovereignly, often picking the least likely to demonstrate his power. It's incredibly comforting for anyone who feels marginalized or overlooked. God delights in using the unexpected.
And finally, Jacob's testimony at the end. God is his lifelong shepherd and redeemer.
That provides such a solid anchor. It's Jacob looking back over a long, often difficult life and saying, he never left me, he guided me, he rescued me. It reminds us that God's promises hold true across generations. Through every trial, his faithfulness endures.
So wrapping it all up, Genesis 48, this short chapter set in a foreign land, It's really like a miniature model of how God works, isn't it?
It is. His wisdom, his prophetic insight consistently overrides our human traditions and logical expectations. And it shows that true spiritual authority, the power to pass on blessing and destiny, isn't diminished by physical weakness or by being in the wrong place geographically.
It poses a challenge to us then.
It really does. It makes you ask, am I like Joseph sometimes? Am I trying to rearrange God's hands because his choices, his path for me or others, doesn't fit my neat conventional plan? Does it seem illogical or unfair by human standards?
Or can I be like Jacob, trusting God's deeper insight, his sovereign choice, even when I can't physically see the outcome or understand the why behind it, choosing faith over sight, promise over present circumstance?
That's the core tension.
Okay, here's a final thought for everyone to chew on. Jacob's deliberate act of adoption and blessing literally shaped the future of Israel. Ephraim and Manasseh became huge, defining tribes, especially in the north. So if our spiritual adoption in Christ grants us an even greater inheritance, makes us co-heirs of everything, what kind of spiritual legacy are we intentionally building right now? How does our life reflect the reality of that immense, unexpected, totally unearned blessing we've received?
That's a question worth pondering long after this deep dive ends.
Indeed. We've reached the end of our deep dive into these sources on Genesis 48. Thank you so much for sharing all this incredibly rich material with us today.
It was fascinating to explore.